For the next hour, you'll be leaving the Show Me state and entering the Show Me the Money state. So stop what you're doing, grab a pen, and get ready to learn. Randy and Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group will be your guides for straight talk and honest answers about living the life you deserve in retirement. So prepare to be empowered. Now, here are your Show Me the Money hosts, Randy Floyd, Jake Floyd, and Jeff Shade.
Good morning. Thank you so much. Welcome to Show Me the Money with Randy and Jake Floyd, the radio show that gives you the straight talk and honest answers you need to help you reach your wealth management and retirement goals through smart investing and careful planning. My name's Jeff Shade, and as always, I'm just here to ask the questions, but you know the words of wisdom is solid advice. Well, they don't come from me. They come from Randy and Jake Floyd at Floyd Financial Group. The gang's all here this morning, so I'll start with you, Randy. How you doing this fine Saturday morning?
Doing really well. I'm just so happy to have it warm and humid.
You're the only one. Warm is fine. Humid I could do without. I don't know how you like that stuff, but nevertheless, Jake, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm sitting in my truck with my air conditioner on.
Okay.
Dad's always liked the warmer weather and the humidity, and, I would rather it be 20 as opposed to 80. But that's my personal opinion.
Well, when it gets so hot and humid, you just can't get away from it. At least if it's cold, you can put on a jacket. But, I like the dry desert heat. That's fine. I would rather have 100 degrees with 6% humidity than 80 degrees with 70-80% humidity. Just me. But nevertheless, we're going to take what we've got. Always a good time here on Saturday morning talking about your fiscal fitness and giving you some financial education on Show Me the Money. Another good show lined up for us today. Let's start with current events like we always do. I understand we had some retail sales reports in the last week. What is that all about?
Yeah, so we try to track, I say we, as a as a country and as a system out there, the system, the market, and all the analysts are always trying to track all these little bits and pieces of things that are calculatable in one way or another. I often wonder about the accuracy of these things, but I guess it's kind of like anything else. As long as they use the same system consistently, I guess then it's something that's measurable and we can count on, right? So the long and the short of it is they're saying that consumer sentiment is down, and they were looking at retail sales and saying, hey, we were expecting a plus 0.3%, and they got a plus 0.1. Mm-hmm. And so that means that retail sales uptick is softening some, and that the economy may be softening a little bit, which is, of course, what Jerome Powell has been trying to accomplish.
Well, as far as retail sales go, personally, I find that I'm not consuming as much as I used to. Maybe it's just me personally, but you're saying that retail sales, although they're not as up as we would like them to be, at least they're up a little bit, which is a positive indicator?
Well, here's what I will say. The situation we're in, normally we would like to have strong sales growth, strong numbers, strong jobs growth, but right now we're still trying to right the ship from the COVID debacle that really, and all the things they did to handle that, right?
Right.
So still we're at a point where negative is somewhat good.
Even negative is good. I was going to say you had a 0.1% positive. At least it was a negative. That's why I perceived that it was good, but maybe not as good as we'd hoped it to be.
It's funny. Springfield, Missouri, is quite a trucking hub, believe it or not. People don't realize that there's a lot of companies that hub out of here. We get a chance to talk to those companies from time to time, and we know this, that trucking companies across the country right now are having a hard time making ends meet as unit shipments are down. In other words, rather than 40,000 units, we're shipping 30,000 units or something like that. But we do know this, that companies are still across the board, for the most part, making their revenue numbers and making their profit numbers. So with that being said, that tells me that part of the inflationary pressure that we've had here is companies didn't want to get behind the eight ball like they did in the 80s. Mm-hmm. And so they were proactive in raising their prices, maybe even prematurely. Now, I have no actual factual basis for that, but it stands to reason that if unit sales are down and trucks are not, trucks move everything in this country eventually.
Right.
If trucks aren't moving it, and we know they're not, that's factual, and companies are still making their revenue numbers and their margin numbers, then we know that they have been sure and quick to raise prices where they had to. So I think we're going to see that we're going to see some easing in inflation. And I think Jerome Powell and a lot of the people that are watching also suspect the same thing. So that's going to probably lead us to some rate cuts later in the year, which we're going to talk a little bit more about later in the program.
When I'm out there on the freeways and surrounded by all of these trucks, I always think that, well, half of them are carrying things from Amazon or online sales. How does online sales play into this retail conversation?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a different medium for retail than what we have seen. In the past, we've always had malls and strip malls and individual stores parked around. My wife loves Amazon for a couple of reasons. She knows that if she gets something and she doesn't like it, she can take it back and she gets her credit same day, usually within 2 hours of when she takes it back. And so that gives her a lot of confidence in buying things there. In fact, if I'm out shopping online for something, she'll go, "Have you checked Amazon?"
My wife does exactly the same thing, too. I was thinking, corrugated box sales must be really, really up because the corner of our garage, about every 2 weeks, I got to flatten these things and take them off to the recycling. We've got a ton of corrugated boxes. I had the thought that maybe that's a place to think about putting money because all of these things that people are buying on Amazon come pretty much in a corrugated box these days.
Well, I know this, that locally here we have some box companies here, and they've been hiring feverishly. They've got big signs, big billboards on the side of their building starting at $23 an hour.
Oh, my gosh. That's
so
crazy.
You're right, Jeff.
Talking with Randy Jake Floyd here at Floyd Financial Group. Of course, our show is called Show Me the Money. We're talking about current events. Let's shift over to the market in general. I know a lot of people are concerned about that when they come in and talk to you. How's the market doing in general, and what are the prognostications as to where it's going to go? We're almost halfway through the year.
So if we look back over our shoulder, starting third quarter last year, we had all kinds of people coming out, the big ones, the Merrills, the JP Morgans, the Morgan Stanleys, and the UBSs, and all these people were trying to predict what the market would look like this year. And we had predictions for the end of 24 being the S&P 500 at maybe 5,200 to maybe the high of 5,500. Mm-hmm. And of course, we have just about arrived there, and we're halfway through the year. It's one of those things where we can look at all of the metrics, if you will, all these measurements from retail sales to jobs to interest rates to the supply of housing that's on the market, all these things that play into this stuff. We can look at this and we can say, well, we think this, we think that. But, it's kind of like, I think I told you earlier, Jeff, I was in Tucson over last week for a few days, and I noticed that where they watered, it was green.
Yep.
And where they didn't, it was brown.
Yeah.
But it doesn't take that much water to change things. And it's kind of the same way in the markets and the way this whole mix works. One little thing can throw off the instrument. And so as we look at markets and what our predictability is for the future, nobody has a crystal ball that works. Everybody just has to look at the metrics and things. But I will say this, in the situation that we're currently in, where we have a lot of money on the sidelines, if we look back over our shoulder to 2007 and 8, when interest rates were really low, when Bernanke took those interest rates way down, he was our Federal Reserve Chairman then, and then he put $3.5 trillion of quantitative easing into the market after that. The market rallied 450% over 11 years. Well, this time we printed $6.5 trillion and put it into the system. Now, they were supposed to bring that back out of the system, but if you look out there at the balance sheet, they have not done that. So there's a lot of money out there, but what's different this time is the Federal Reserve, starting in March of 22, started to raise interest rates rather than lowering interest rates and took them to 5.25%. And so that has kept a lot of people on the sidelines out of the market earning that easy 5.5% interest. But as we come to the tail end of the year, I believe we're going to see rates maybe cut, and we're going to talk about that. And I think that's going to prop the market.
I am looking at the internet right now as you were speaking, and it seems to be full of all of these predictions. And it occurred to me that I don't know about this. I want your opinion on it. So many people have an opinion on what's going to happen. They're making these predictions. And to me, prognostication is sort of a fool's errand. What do you think?
Well, according to Harry Dent.
Oh, that's our favorite guy on this show.
Right. And Robert Kiyosaki.
Kiyosaki, yeah. Rich man.
We're going to have 150,000 on Bitcoin in the next 12 months, which I don't know. I don't know where he comes up with that. But anyway, and then Harry's always, he's the ultimate doomsayer always. And, once in a while, even a blind hog finds an acorn, and he's right. But
yeah, I would say with crypto specifically, I think that it's very possible that we could see a number like that on the other side of the election. It doesn't mean it's necessarily worth investing in because you're just kind of gambling with that at that point. But in the shorter term, I would honestly think that we're going to see some of the opposite. There's been a lot of these really high-profile names come online and say, hey, I think Bitcoin's going to 100,000, 150,000, 250,000. Even there's a few calling for $1 million a coin. So if you do the math out there, and there's 21 million Bitcoins and $1 million a coin, that's $21 trillion, which is roughly equivalent to about half of the stock market. You have to have some explanation as to where that money's going to come from. A lot of these people making these predictions have no clue how a valuation gets added in such a manner. But there will have to be a huge amount of money move into the space. There may not be enough money out there to do that, even if everybody agreed that Bitcoin was the way to go and bought it all simultaneously tomorrow. But I do think that as a risk-on asset after the election, like a lot of other risk-on assets, I think it will go up.
With your clients at Floyd Financial Group, do they still ask you about Bitcoin? Is there an interest in that sort of thing?
I have mainly people come in and say, you're not going to invest me in Bitcoin, right?
Okay, that's how the conversation.
That's usually the question I get. I do have a few people that want Bitcoin, but by and large, it's like, I don't want any of that Bitcoin crap. You're not going to do that to me, are you?
I would say a couple of years ago, though, it was pretty common for people to come in and say, hey, can we get some Bitcoin? And
if anything is ripping, making money, people want in it. But usually by the time the people want in it, it's over. Right. So people want to be buying Bitcoin at 70,000 a coin. At 17,000 a coin, they didn't want anything to do with it. It's very counterintuitive. And for that reason, as all these people come out backing Bitcoin, you start seeing Bitcoin go down. Why is that? It's because you've reached the euphoric stage of this, right? You've reached where everybody is bullish, which means all that's going to happen is a few people are going to get negative and it's going to bring it back down the other side. When you really want to be buying a risky asset like that is when not everybody is on board. Then there's still minds to be changed and more room to go. If you do it when everybody's already on board, then all that can happen is people get cold feet and run out, and then it comes back down to us.
Well, I'm guessing that we're not bullish on Bitcoin here at Floyd Financial Group. Again, it's still kind of a mystery to me, but it is not something, that you can really predict very well, and it is very, very volatile. So for the time being, Bitcoin, it's something we can talk about, but it's not something that we're really going to put our money into. We're talking with Randy and Jake Floyd, Floyd Financial Group. We're glad you could join us for this week's Show Me the Money. We're here for you each week for your fiscal fitness, your financial education, and we are glad you decided to join us. If you have questions about anything that we've spoken about on the program today, you want the opportunity to get in and sit down with Randy and Jake at Floyd Financial Group, have your private conversation to talk about your roadmap towards a prosperous retirement. We are offering this opportunity right now for you to do just that by calling 417-889-7233. I know it's the weekend, but go ahead and make that call right now. 417-889-7233. You'll get a friendly voice on the other end of the line. It'll be Ashley who'll give you a call back during the week and set up that appointment for you to have this no cost, no obligation, and no judgment, just a casual conversation with Randy and Jake at Floyd Financial Group to get your questions answered. Again, it's not going to cost you a dime. Go ahead and make that call this weekend, 417-889-7233. You can also find out more about us online at floydfinancialgroup.com. We're going to take a break, gentlemen. When we come back, we'll be talking about rate cuts, and later on in the program, we'll be talking about one asset class that I think most people should have in their portfolio, and more when Show Me the Money continues right here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
Ready for another helping of some more real money talk? Thought so. Now, here's another serving of Show Me the Money with your hosts, Randy and Jake Floyd, with Jeff Shea.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Randy and Jake. You're listening to Show Me the Money, and in this segment, we're going to be talking about rate cuts, when we think they're coming, how that's going to affect the economy, bonds, layoffs, etc.
Yeah, we've got a lot to talk about here. That is the $64,000 question, gentlemen. Always, almost every day, people are wondering, they promised rate cuts at the end of last year, the beginning of this year. We haven't had them yet. It's almost July. It's halfway through the year. We haven't had any yet. So what's the latest opinion on when we're going to have rate cuts and what's affecting those decisions?
Well, it's all data dependent, Jeff.
Data dependent, okay.
Maybe election dependent.
So basically, what the Fed has been looking to do, obviously by raising interest rates, is to slow down the economy and to slow down this really hot and heavy episode of consumerism that has continued to spike prices. And we talked about this. If I'm selling watermelons or fruit or whatever on the corner, if I can sell a whole truckload at $5, and next week I come back and say, well, I think I'll sell them at $7, and I sell the whole truckload at $7, why would I cut the price back to $5? You won't. And so as pressure builds here, with interest rates being higher and people having to spend more on housing and more as prices have been elevated, the economy is going to slow down, and that's what he's been trying to kind of get to. People had all kinds of speculation that they thought that inflation would start to curtail toward the tail end of last year, and that we would probably have rate cuts even the first quarter of 2024. Of course, we saw that data was a little hot, so that didn't happen. Inflation was still moving along at 3.7 to maybe almost 4%. It has had a couple of months now in a row where it started to relax and wane a little bit. We also have seen that there's been more layoffs across the country and things. So we're hopeful, that maybe we'll be seeing that first rate cut come the tail end of the year. And as Jake just kind of piped in and alluded to here, with the election coming, I mean, who knows what that's going to bring and what type of shenanigans may occur inside the...
That's being kind. Go ahead.
Supposedly the Fed is supposed to be an independent organization, but I think that'll become fairly obvious maybe in September.
Yep.
I think it's very likely we're going to have a September rate cut.
Okay.
That'll probably be the first one. What that kind of leaves the door open to is the next opportunity for a cut is the 7th of November, which is 2 days after the election.
Right.
Wow.
By the way, did you know that the election is going to be on the 5th of November, Guy Fawkes Day?
Can you explain for those who don't know about Guy Fawkes? What is Guy Fawkes Day?
Remember, the 5th of November. So if you remember, there was a movie actually that came out about it not too long ago called V for Vendetta. But it was referencing basically a revolutionary guy back in the late 1500s trying to come out against, a tyrannical government. So it'll be very interesting to see how things progress as we have an election on Guy Fawkes Day with, frankly, a tyrannical government in place. With what's already going to be a very charged few days. This will probably add to it. I imagine we'll probably see some Guy Fawkes masks out there in the crowds.
Let's talk about inflation. I mean, I am looking at the internet again, and now it says inflation is expected to have fallen back to the 2% target for the first time in nearly 3 years in official figures that have come out recently. Most analysts are forecasting official figures will show the consumer price index dropping to 2% in May, down from 2.3% in April. So are we indeed close to getting to our goal of 2%? What do you feel about this?
I don't know that we're ever going to hit 2%, to be honest. I think if we hit 2%, we'll hit 0% or something less. With a healthy economy, I don't know if we'll ever get it all the way down to 2. But I will say that I don't think we're going to get rate cuts in July, most likely. But the stage is definitely set for them to start to allude to the fact that we might cut in September, which really could put a hold on this market taking a breather. I mean, as it really kind of needs to take a breather, the Fed's going to be stepping in talking about, hey, we're not there yet, but we're getting close. And then in September, traditionally a month where it's the only negative month average on the year, meaning the month of September over all throughout the market history is down about 1.2%. Every other month is positive. So in September, when typically we see weaker markets, we're going to be expecting most likely a cut on the 18th of September. And so I do think that's pretty likely at this point. In fact, you can go ahead and say, hey, Jake said, the 18th of September. We'll see. I know how you feel about prognostications from the last segment, Jeff, but
sure.
I'm gonna make one here and say I really think the 18th of September is going to be a rate cut, but we'll see. At this point, the market and the Fed swaps market agrees with me, but there's a lot that could happen in the next 3 months or so while we're waiting for that to come to pass.
How much of a rate cut do you think we're going to have? A quarter of a point, something like that?
Yeah, I think we'll see a quarter point, unless things really just look like they're turning bad quickly. But the Fed knows that would cause panic. I think it'll be a quarter point. And then as the data comes in, if the data really starts to fall off, they might do it faster than that. But I would expect a quarter point and then maybe another quarter point in November and then maybe take a breather. But a lot of it's going to depend on the election and just the overall willingness of big business to invest in itself. pay its employees or whether they're going to clam up because they get scared.
Okay, so we're looking for possibly a 0.5-point rate cut by the end of the year. What about 2025? Is that largely dependent upon what's going to happen with the election as far as rate cuts go?
Jeff, that's going to be data dependent. No, I'm just...
That's your favorite thing. I'm going to make a plaque or something that put up.
Yep.
That's data dependent with your picture on it.
Dependent. Yep.
I love that.
No, I think to answer your question, I think it's way too early to even really start to prognosticate about that, just simply because we do have this election coming up. And I will tell you, I think the market's probably going to be strong looking into 2025.
Mm-hmm.
Even if we don't have not a regime change, but a presidential change.
Regime.
But, because again, there's some monumental things that will happen. If I feel like this, just looking at what I think would happen if we have a Trump victory, he will regulate the border. He will deregulate business. He will cut corporate taxes. If we have a Biden victory, he will raise taxes, forgive more debt, and keep us on the debt train and tax you and I to help pay for it.
Wow.
So I think that's the two tails right there. And I think that America's ready for a switch back a little bit to the conservative side. And hopefully that's what we'll see. And I think it'll be a great 2025 if we get that, because business needs and wants predictability.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump will give business that.
Talking with Randy Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group. We've been talking about rate cuts. How's all this going to affect the bond market, do you think?
Well, when rate cuts come along, if you're owning bonds today that are medium duration and stuff, and you're in the 4.5% yield range, and interest rates start to really get cut and they come down quite a bit, we're going to see not only will you continue to get your coupon as long as you hold that bond, but that bond will appreciate in value as rates go down below that 4.5% range. So it's potentially a pretty good time to own some bonds because you're getting a decent yield on those right now. And you do have some pretty good positive outlook over the next year or so, I would say, for sure.
Okay, well, when you talk about rate cuts, I always think about the housing market and the fact that it is sluggish right now. There are many people sitting on mortgages at maybe 2-3%. They're not going to get out of those and get into a 7% mortgage. How does this all play out as far as the housing market goes?
So we have seen some softening in the price of housing, and that's just due to the fact that there's a lot of people that cannot buy right now at the current interest rates. So we know typically banks are looking for a couple of percent spread. So whatever they can borrow money from either you and I in the form of money market accounts and CD accounts, or what they can borrow from the federal government. As rates come down, right now Jerome Powell has rates between at 5.25 to 5.5 is what banks pay to borrow money. As that comes down, the mortgage rates will come down, and that will make housing more affordable. Now, does that mean that housing prices are going to continue to come down? They may come down a little bit more, but I've got to think that if interest rates come down quickly at all, that is going to actually probably apply a little bit more pressure to the upside. Now, again, depending on the next president and how they affect capital gains, both long-term, of course, short-term's normal taxation now already, but long-term cap gains and things are going to really affect what people will do, as well as that interest rate. So it's going to be interesting to watch. But generally speaking, I think housing is probably not going to come down much more. And if we get a pretty good tick down in interest rates, that will perk up the market a little bit. But housing prices are probably going to then start to go back the other direction, and that's up.
Yeah, and my local real estate agent that I talk to quite regularly says the same thing. Housing prices are holding pretty steady right now. In some cases, you may be able to negotiate $10,000 or so, but if it is a desirable house, they're pretty much getting what they want for that. There are a couple of lots in my particular neighborhood that were recently sold, and I know that they're clearing off the trees right now to build houses on them, and I asked about that, and she said that's the same guy who bought those lots. There seem to be people buying lots and putting up houses, but they're going to be renting those houses. So that is something that's interesting. Do you think that we're moving more towards a rental society amongst younger people and people owning homes? Is the American dream out of reach for some people, do you think?
Well, the American dream has always been out of reach for young people at the beginning of their careers.
Right.
I mean, I remember when I was first married to my wife, my father-in-law gave us a little bit of money for a down payment on a house. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to buy when we did.
Sure.
But even then, our interest rate was 10.25%, and we were happy to get
You
it.
were happy to get that.
This is 1982. And, I think our house price was actually about $39,000. That was 1,000 square feet is what that house was.
Wow.
A total.
As we'd say here, it's a big one.
Yeah, that's right.
It was a big one.
With a carport, not a garage, So, but here's what I would say. I do think that the American dream of owning a house and that sort of thing is still out there and going to be available. It's just that I think today a lot of times people are thinking, well, I'm 20, I need a house, or I'm 25 and I have to have a house. And I think if we were to look back historically, I don't think there were a lot of 25-year-olds that owned houses 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago either.
No.
No.
Or they think, I'm 20, the government should give me a house.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, that's a topic for another conversation, but right now I want to take an opportunity to remind people again that you're listening to Show Me the Money with Randy and Jake Floyd here on a Saturday morning. Glad you could join us again. If you like these guys, you want to sit in and have a private conversation with them, just a very casual conversation about your journey towards a confident retirement, give us a call. You can do it this weekend at 417-889-7233. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to sit down with you in a no-tie zone and talk about whatever's on your mind as far as retirement goes. Once again, 417-889-7233 is our telephone number. No cost, no obligation for this retirement consultation. Again, 417-889-7233. You can also find out more about us online at FloydFinancialGroup.com. We're going to take a break, Randy and Jake. When we come back, we're going to be talking about one asset class that is critical to any financial plan when our program continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
Ready to climb a mountain of financial know-how? Good, because it's time for more Show Me the Money with your financial Sherpas, Randy and Jake Floyd.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Randy and Jake. You're listening to Show Me the Money, and in this segment, we're going to be talking about the fact that cash can be a valuable asset in a portfolio.
That's right. You can't afford to forget about cash when planning for your wealth. So we're going to give you some guidelines to help manage this often overlooked asset class. When it comes to cash, we were talking earlier about some people and how much cash that they have on hand. And sometimes for lucky people, cash may build up in their checking accounts and it gets to the point where it's just too much cash. Is there any such thing as too much cash?
Yes, there would be such a thing as too much cash. You can't be too conservative. However, I will say this, that cash plays an important role in everybody's retirement as well as their retirement portfolio. So when we talk about cash, many times people don't realize that when they invest in a mutual fund or if they invest in a bond fund, many of those have cash in there all the time, and they need to have cash so that they can make investments as investments come up and not have to sell current positions that they may like and love that they're not ready to get out of yet, so that they can actually make effective moves. Now, let's talk about the two functions of cash for a retiree. Number one, everybody needs an adequate amount of cash on hand to handle emergencies and to feel good about, if they're traveling out west for vacation or whatever, they break down beside the road, we need to have cash.
Sure.
If if the roof leaks, we need to have cash. If the plumbing has a problem, we need to have cash, or whatever it is, those little emergencies that come up. We also, depending on what cycle or what stage of the cycle of an economy or a market we're in, we'll have more cash at times than others, just because sometimes we're actually waiting for a buying opportunity rather than trying to put money to work in what we would call maybe a too speculative a manner, where we've already seen markets run up, and maybe we've seen a particular asset class run up. Like, once in a while when things get tough, the consumer staples area of the market, because people buy, Right Guard and Gillette razor blades and Tide all the time, it's a safe haven. People pile in there, but eventually it gets so high that it's no longer a deal. And so maybe we put money in there, we've made our money, and now we want to pull some money to the sideline to realize that gain and not lose that gain as things start to trickle back down and find the next home. So having cash available so I can buy when the time is right is very important, The other thing is, and Jake coined this, I think we should put this in the unabridged financial dictionary.
Okay.
That every Walmart becomes a Kmart, or every becomes a Sears or a Montgomery Ward. And it's true. So, and we've seen this of late. The other thing is we have to be careful as we're chasing returns. So we don't want to chase returns. We have to be careful and watch when stocks and asset classes get too expensive. Let's pull some money to the sideline and let's find the next place where we can deploy that cash, where it makes sense that we're probably going to get some growth on there without too much risk. Because eventually every mountain has a top, and then we're down the other side on the roller coaster or the runaway train, so we don't want to be there. So cash has these important positions. Number one, for emergencies, we need to have enough cash on hand. We sometimes have people, and I love these people, and I think it's awesome. They've been saving their whole life, and they stash money into a savings account over and over and over, and they've been doing it and doing it and doing it. And then they get to retirement, and they have all this money in their retirement account, and that's what they're relying on, to live on month to month, day to day. And so they end up taking out more than they're actually spending and saving that money again. And so what they're doing is they're paying taxes needlessly on money they really don't need.
Okay.
And they should probably, in some cases, just leave it invested, right? Rather than taking that money out and paying the taxes on it. And so unless there's a reason other than just, I want to save money over there and have this, if my nest egg is 3 to 6 months that I've got in my regular bank accounts and checking accounts where I've got that as a cushion, I don't think you need more cash than that in your bank accounts and in quick access. Other than that, it probably needs to stay invested. And again, we really need to be careful about when we go out and buy things like cars and things like that, because if I pull out $50,000 additional to buy a car, that may put me up into a 25% tax bracket. So if I finance, maybe at 1%,
right,
I save money by not doing it, So there's just a lot of reasons to have cash in your portfolio, have cash, in some bank accounts, but cash is not trash in most cases. I mean, a lot of people say, well, it's not earning for me like I'd like. If that's the case, if you feel like if you got 3 months cash on hand, that's probably enough. I will tell you 3 to 6 months is what I think people should have. Cash is just a good place to be sometimes when you're waiting for opportunity.
Okay, so you talked about 3 to 6 months for emergencies, and when we talk about cash, a lot of people think about $100 bills, which, that's one aspect of saving cash. But let's talk about where to stash your cash if you're not saving it in $100 bills stuffed in the mattress. So, okay, liquidity, that's the big thing with cash, and hopefully keeping up with inflation. What are some of the places that you would recommend that we stash cash for liquidity purposes and try to at least keep up with inflation?
Yeah, so in today's world, we got decent rates on money market accounts, which I consider that a cash equivalent because it takes a day to get access to it in most cases.
Mm-hmm.
CDs can be a good cash alternative. However, you usually have a time frame on there where you have to leave that. You don't get your interest paid right up front like you do on a money market account at the end of every month. Sometimes you have to go for the full term before you get any interest there. But some money in your checking account is always good. That way you know that no matter what happens, it's good to go. The other thing is, we have some really ultra short bond funds right now. They're just about as good as cash, or they're really safe. So those are some places to park money. But also, again, we're just going to have cash in those accounts sometimes, knowing that in a week or within the month, we're going to redeploy that cash someplace else other than some sort of a fixed asset.
Okay, how much is too much cash, though?
Well, it depends on each person and their tolerance for risk. But I would say this, again, for people in their checking account and in their day-to-day life, 3 to 6 months of cash to cover expenses is all you need there. Inside a portfolio, it just depends on your risk tolerance. And we use cash as part of a risk mitigation tool, just a portion, not the whole thing, just a portion of it. And then we have bonds in there, we have stocks in there, and maybe some money market accounts as well. But we're always going to have a little bit of cash out there just so that we're ready to buy when the opportunity comes along.
Okay, so there are a lot of positives to cash. I think you've explained them quite well. What are some of the reasons why you may not want to have cash in a portfolio? And are there any reasons, basically?
Well, I mean, again, it's not that you're going to have the vast majority of your portfolio in cash unless we're in the middle of a COVID-19 or something that is a great and durable, I would call it, systemic risk. So many times we hear news, it's a knee-jerk reaction that the market drops 5% today, it's back tomorrow. Case in point on one stock might be Adobe. Adobe was way down, now it's up. The market day to day is just something we have to watch, and there's opportunity that presents itself every day, and there's also opportunity to get out and convert to cash every day before things go the other direction. A certain amount of cash is always going to be out there. And again, I want to point out to people that just because when you look at your mutual fund statement, your American funds or whatever it is, there's cash inside those portfolios. You just don't see it. It just represents the whole number. And as money managers out there managing and looking for opportunity, they've got to have cash to be able to act and respond.
I have read that cash investment is really a short-term obligation, usually fewer than 90 days. It provides a return in the form of interest payments. Do you think that that is a fair statement, that cash should only be used for 90 days, or do you think that there's room in the portfolio for longer-term investments that are the foundation is cash?
Yeah, I don't think that beyond the money market right now at 5.25%, I don't think that just parking money in an FDIC insured account inside your portfolio at 0.45 for long term is a good idea. No. But again, when we're looking at long-term strategy and managing portfolios, we have to have some cash available.
Okay, so cash is the foundation of many portfolios. There's a place for it in your portfolio. And as far as how much cash, again, for emergencies, we recommend somewhere between 3 and 6 months. And for short-term investments, of course, that certainly does depend upon the individual. But still, cash is king, and it certainly isn't trash in today's world. Talking with Randy and Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group, and we're talking about this asset class of cash. So if you got questions about how much cash you should have on hand, we invite you to give us a call here at Floyd Financial Group and ask that question among others. We're certainly not a limited scope advisor. We're a comprehensive advisor here at Floyd Financial Group, so we can not only talk about cash, but any number of other financial tools. If you are looking to get your questions answered, and you want the straight talk and honest answers that you need to help you plan for a confident retirement, once again, we're offering the opportunity for you to come in, sit down with us here at Floyd Financial Group. You've heard Randy and Jake on the radio now probably for years. You wonder what these guys are like? Well, they're the same as they are on the radio. You'll find that out when you call us and set up your appointment. 417-889-7233 is the number to call. You can do it this weekend. 417-889-7233. Now, Ashley is not there in person this weekend, but if you leave your name and telephone number, she'll give you a call back during the week and set up this all-important call for you. Again, 417-889-7233. If you want to come in and sit down with the guys, that is fine. If you want to do it by phone, that's fine as well, too. But I think the important thing for you to do is to get that conversation started. You have a friend in the financial services business here, somebody that you can turn to when you need answers about your retirement journey. Again, no cost. There is no obligation. There is absolutely, positively no judgment whatsoever. It's just a casual and friendly conversation. 417-889-7233. You can also find out more about us online at FloydFinancialGroup.com. It's FloydFinancialGroup.com. We're going to take a break. When we come back here on Show Me the Money, we'll be talking about a case of the week that we had last week and more when our show continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
People of the Ozarks, step away from the fishing pole and prepare to be shown the money, because we're back with more straight talk and honest answers with Randy Floyd, Jake Floyd, and Jeff Shea.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Randy and Jake. You're listening to Show Me the Money, and in this segment, we're going to be talking about estate planning and also coupling that potentially with long-term care planning.
Right, and the basis of this conversation is a case that you had this week. And Randy, I understand that you had a couple come in, and they had questions about estate planning and particularly long-term care. Where do we start with this conversation? What do you want us to know about this particular case?
So I want to go back and build a little bit of a base for people here before we get into the actual case thing. So let's talk about briefly for a moment what an estate plan is. Basically, an estate plan, and people say, well, do I have an estate? Yes, everybody has an estate. Some people have big ones, some people have little ones. Some of them are complex, some are not so complex, right? But everybody has an estate. And basically, estate planning is setting up a system through the legal system that helps us to avoid courts and that sort of thing, but helps us to have our wishes done with our assets. Now, as long as we're all cognitive and we can make good decisions and we're not incapacitated and we're alive and doing well, estate planning is, hey, it doesn't really matter. But the moment somebody is incapacitated, either short-term or long-term, or they've fallen up on some type of catastrophic illness, or they have passed away, now all of a sudden your estate plan becomes very important. So estate planning is just making sure that your assets go to who you want them to go to, and you've set up a system that helps you in the event you're incapacitated to continue to have somebody else run your life, pay your bills, until you can get back on your feet. Or if it's a long-term care scenario, somebody's going to be there to handle that long-term. So that's really what an estate plan boils down to. Now, I'm not an attorney. We have one here in the building, but I've been dealing with estate planning attorneys for a long time, for going on a quarter of a century now. So we're experienced in this area. Now, the thing I want to kind of branch out into is a lot of people don't realize that an effective estate plan can also help you through long-term care planning. Now, early in my career here, we did a lot of workshops and a lot of studies on the 4 ways to pay for long-term care. So one of those is out of your hip pocket, just pay with cash. Number 2 is if you were a veteran, and there's certain classifications you have to meet as a veteran to get this, but there's some veterans benefits called aid and attendance that can help offset the cost of long-term care. Then there is long-term care insurance, and there's many, many different types of that. And some of the newer products are much, much better than the old ones where things don't change and the prices don't go up and price people out of the market. And then finally, there is Medicaid, which is to some people a dirty word. However, I will tell you that if you are a senior citizen or if you've worked 30, 40, 50 years, you've funded Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security all the years that you worked. So it's something that you have paid for. It's something that you do actually have an entitlement to as you funded it over your lifetime. So there's 4 ways to pay: hip pocket, veterans, insurance, Medicaid. That's basically what we have. Along that way, if we're going to rely upon Medicaid to help us, which most people are just not set up, Jeff, to pay $8,000, $9,000, $10,000 a month, depending on where you live in this country, to have somebody in a nursing home. They just can't pay that. That's just a whole lot of money. So if you've got farms, if you've got real estate, if you've got just your home and maybe just money that you've saved in CDs and things of that nature, there are things that you can do through an estate plan that will help you to not lose those assets. And first and foremost, what we do is we protect the stay-at-home spouse. So the person in the nursing home, they're at a point where we want to make sure they get the care they need, but we also want to protect them, make sure that mom or dad, if they're left at home, are going to be able to live in the way that they've been used to and not have to suffer because of that. So now I'm going to get to the case of the week.
Okay.
I just needed to give that background because what I'm going to tell you is this particular week, we have a client that called me that we've had for well over a decade, I think maybe even 15 years. And along this pathway, as we've helped them with investments and things, we talked about estate planning, and we had talked about doing asset protection planning because they had their home, a rental property, and about $800,000 or $900,000 in cash. One of the things we had talked about was how to structure a plan using estate planning to help them qualify for benefits in the event they fell upon a long-term care need. Now, again, I am not against people self-paying, but I am saying this. If you have funded a system your whole life, it's like paying into Social Security. When you turn 65, you're not going to say, I don't need that.
Or I've heard people say it's a government handout. Well, no, it's not. You paid into it your entire life. It's not a government handout. You're entitled to it. Why wouldn't you take it?
Right, exactly. So we talked to these folks many, many times about doing asset protection planning using a certain type of irrevocable trust. And we got really close, but they just could never quite pull the trigger. Well, I just got a call yesterday morning, actually, from this lady that I love dearly. She's sweet as she can be, and she said, my husband's had a stroke, And I said, so what's his prognosis? How's he doing? And she said, well, the doctor says that this is as good as he's going to get, and he's not able to be at home. Mm-hmm. So here we are. We're now looking at a skilled nursing situation. And even right here in the last bastion of sanity, Springfield, Missouri, it's about $7,500 to $8,000 a month for this type of care. So the fact that if we had done the planning 5 years prior to him needing that, it would be much easier and much more effective and not so invasive for us to do planning to protect their assets because we got ahead of the curve. Medicaid law says that if I transfer assets 5 years ahead of needing care, that those assets do not count against me. Right. So all we're doing is using the rules. We're not breaking any rules. We're not doing anything that Medicaid doesn't know that we do. In fact, when we do these Medicaid applications, we fill everything out. We tell them exactly what we've done. They know exactly what we're doing and how we did it. And we've just been doing this for so long. Since 2006, we've been filing Medicaid for people here. So there's a complete method to this, and it's something that the state of Missouri is used to dealing with. We just know the rules, and sometimes we know the rules better than they do. So the bottom line is we still were able to make pretty good lemonade out of the lemons that this couple's been dealt, because we're going to be able to still save the assets for mom. Even though dad's in the nursing home, we are going to have to give up some of dad's income. He has a Social Security and a small pension we're going to have to give up. But other than that, Medicaid's going to pick up the difference, and mom's going to be able to keep, through this plan, in the end, it'll take us about 3 or 4 months to get there. She's going to be able to keep all the assets. Now, the problem comes in is if mom would ever need care, we can't do this process again, because when we have a spouse, we get what's called a community spouse resource, and we get to set that aside. Then we divvy up some assets to the nursing home spouse, but we're able to do a loan and a promissory note. There's lots of things that go into this. I won't get into much detail here except to say that we can get all the money back to mom and protect her for the future. Now she understands, and she will do additional long-term care planning to protect her and to protect her children for the future. So all I'm saying is think about getting ahead of this curve rather than being behind it. So an estate plan at its best is, this is the simplest version. When I die, I want all my stuff to go to my kids. I want everybody to know exactly how it goes, and the court doesn't get involved. Then we have the long-term care planning side, and that is we still want those same things to happen, but in the event I need long-term care, here's the plan, here's how it's going to work, and here's how we're going to protect not only my spouse, but also my kids long-term.
And I think statistics show, Randy, that most people, I would say that it's probably 50% or so are going to need long-term care. So this really does apply to a lot of people. And I've often wondered how you would save, so to speak, the family farm from the nursing home. But as you said, you have managed to find a way to do that. And I want to point out, too, that we're not doing anything illegal. We're not gaming the system. These are all rules that are set in place. We're just taking advantage of the rules that are out there and using them to your benefit. So if you're worried about, losing the family farm, all you got to do is give us a call here at Floyd Financial Group, and we want to get ahead of this wave. Our telephone number, 417-889-7233, if you want more details on that. 417-889-7233. But as you said, Randy, that 5-year look-back period, that is really ultra important in this equation, is it not?
It very much is, yes. So any asset that we transfer to the properly structured trust, once we do that, it starts the 5-year clock running. Once 60 months has passed, you're golden. Everything is fine. I will say this. When people are looking to do asset protection planning using a trust, you need to make sure that you're talking to an attorney that is qualified in this area, that knows what's going on, has got experience there. There's a classification called a certified elder law attorney that you can use, CELA. They don't have to be that, but they need to have experience in doing this and really understand how it works. And internally here, we have Elizabeth, who has worked as a paralegal for attorneys for years. And of course, she's now an attorney, and she's doing estate planning and long-term care planning along with that as a part of her estate planning practice.
Okay, so you can give the advice there at Floyd Financial Group, but as well, you have Elizabeth on staff there, too, who can handle sort of the nuts and bolts of this. Again, if you have questions about estate planning, 417-889-7233. We can help you possibly save the family farm. For the purposes of the rest of this conversation, let's talk about some of the basic documents that someone really should have in place as part of their estate plan. And there are basically two types of documents. There are the documents while you're living, and then there are the documents that you want to have once you have passed. As far as the documents that I'm thinking of while you're living, it would be a power of attorney and maybe a healthcare directive. Are those two that you would recommend?
Yes, for sure. I mean, everybody needs a power of attorney for finance, one that allows people, and it needs to be what's called durable. Durable means it survives your incapacity.
Okay.
And there's two ways to set those up. They are called springing and immediate. So a springing power of attorney says, hey, it only becomes effective when I am incapacitated, and many times it'll say I need to have two doctors to agree before it will work. I would tell you that our experience has been that immediate is better, but again, whoever your attorney is, or if you talk to Elizabeth about that, she will clarify some of those points. But a power of attorney for finance is very, very important.
Okay, and then there's the healthcare directive. Usually I'm asked about that when I go to the doctor. Can you explain what that is and how we get that?
Yeah, basically just says, hey, when I can't make decisions for myself, who can, and what do those look like? And it'll even have in there, if I am in a permanent vegetative state, if I'm not going to get better, it gives instruction as to what is next.
Okay, so power of attorney, healthcare directive, those are while you're alive. Once you have passed, and then, you have the choice between will and trust. When is a will good enough?
Well, the will is basically instructions to the probate court, and then the process of probate is to prove it true and valid and to get the assets and look at them and then divide them, right? So we really want to try to avoid using the will. We always want somebody to have a will, and then if you have the asset protection trust, the will has an even bigger role that it plays, but I won't get into that on today's program.
Okay, so there are revocable trust and then there are irrevocable trust. What is the difference between those two?
Yeah, so the irrevocable trust and the revocable living trust, most people have a revocable living trust. Then there's two types of irrevocable trust. There's one that really is geared toward doing generation skipping and things of that nature, which is not the type that most people would use, and it's not what we would use to placing of assets for qualification for Medicaid or maybe VA benefits. The one that we use here, the type of irrevocable trust, the parts that are irrevocable are the parts that make it work for VA and Medicaid. The other parts, there are ways, and again, I won't get into that in the program here. That's something for you and your attorney, or for Elizabeth, if you're going to talk to her, to talk about how you can use what's called a special power of appointment to have control over changing how the assets go, even in the irrevocable trust at death.
If you are interested in what we have talked about, you want to get your affairs in order, so to speak, you've got questions about wills and trusts and Medicare and Medicaid and long-term care, again, you've got a source to answer those questions. It's Floyd Financial Group and Randy and Jake, 417-889-7233. Very important number. Write that down, 417-889-7233. That is the number that you will call to set up an appointment to talk with Randy and Jake at Floyd Financial Group. A very casual conversation, no cost, no obligation, and certainly there is no judgment. You've got a friend right here in Springfield, Missouri in the financial services industry, and someone who is ready, willing, and able and would love to talk to you. We love to meet new people here. 417-889-7233 is our telephone number to set up that appointment. Go ahead, give it a call this weekend. Ashley will call you back during the week and set up an appointment that is convenient for you. 417-889-7233. You could also set up your appointment online and find out more about us at FloydFinancialGroup.com. Well, Randy and Jake, I want to thank you so much for your time. We're out of time for this week. For Randy and Jake, I'm Jeff Shade. Have a great weekend. We'll talk to you again next week with another edition of Show Me the Money right here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
The information provided in the preceding program is for educational purposes only and are not intended as investment advice for any individual or entity. All information contained herein believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representations as to its completeness or accuracy. The opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice. Please consult your financial professional before executing any financial strategy. Financial planning offered through Floyd Financial Group, LLC, an investment advisor.